Okay. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inu nastaghfiruh wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lah wa man yudlil fala hadiya lah wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu rasul. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullah khair. The circumstances of our brothers and sisters in Gaza is something that we need to deeply reflect, not only as a crisis for the ummah, but as a reflection of our status, of where we stand. And as the Prophet ﷺ told us, that this ummah is like a body. If parts of it are sick, then the whole body is sick. And we find ourselves in situations where the Muslim ummah is now confused with regards to what do we say and what position do we take when it comes to our brothers and sisters in Gaza. And not just that, we have issues in Kashmir, we have issues in with the Rohingya in Myanmar, we have issues with the Uyghurs, we have issues around the world. Some have passed, some are coming. There was issues, of course, in Somalia. There was issues in Chechnya. There were issues in India recently. So there's been issues where the ummah is being attacked, is being pushed for many, many reasons, and one of them is that we say La ilaha illallah. This is, we have to understand that one of the reasons for the atrocities that are being perpetrated today is the fact that we say La ilaha illallah. There's a lot of things that come with the statement of Tawheed, of La ilaha illallah. It's not just qawlul haqq, but it is also a very qawlan thaqila. It is a very, very heavy statement that comes with a lot of responsibility. In order for us to have hope, and we know that the Prophet ﷺ told us that there will be time where this ummah is going to change. The question is where we're going to stand and where they're going to be amongst the ones changing. But for us to maintain this issue alive, we need to learn and understand our history. And what was entitled to me today to speak about was an overview of the historical events that led to the current affairs in Gaza, just highlighting some key moments and decisions that impacted the region. And it is important to know our history because historical amnesia, historical erasing our historical record is one of the ways that the colonizers have been doing for quite some time. It is a strategy. They've done it in India, they've done it in Africa. This was part of the colonial approach, the imperial approach, was to make people forget where they're coming from, who they are, and what the issue was in the first place. So now you find in all these places, be it India, Africa, or the Muslim world, the Arab world, whatever, Middle East, where people are now kind of saying, like, what's the problem, by the way? Like, what's going on? Like, we don't understand. We're a bit confused. People are starting to forget their history. If you look and take a study in colonialism and imperialism, which is kind of hard these days, I think they're not really offering him as much as they used to. And that is also part of the agenda of erasing the history. Even in this country, the history of the native people, I mean, it's something that is not really being taught in schools. It's being hijacked. I'm sure that a lot of you have no clue what's happened, right? Now you might, well, wait a second, you went to school here. How come we don't know? How come we don't learn? The history of slavery is somehow being taught because there was a strong movement in America. But still, most African Americans do not know fully their history. They do not. It's not taught that strongly. It's happening now more and more. But it's a reality. Erasing the historical record is something that is real. So let's not allow that to happen when it comes to our ummah. So I won't take too long, but I want you to keep in mind about 10 points that are very important. I mentioned some of them yesterday, some of the guys are here today. They gave me kind of same topic, so I'm going to try to spin it a bit so it's not as boring as yesterday. But they're important. Historical lessons are important for us to learn. So specific dates and specific events, so that when someone asks you, or when your children ask you, what happened, what's going on here, you know what to tell them. And you know why. And you know who is who. You know who's the invader and who's the invaded. You know who is the colonizer and who is the colonized. You know who is the thief and who is the one whose theft's being done upon. These need to be understood, because we're in a time now where someone takes something from you and then you're blamed for for having lost it or something like that, or trying to get it back. Right? How dare you trying to take your belongings back? This is the ridiculousness of our current society and world, where we praise ourselves for being very rational and very logical, very ethical, human rights, and so on. Yet when it comes to the actual issue, you find that that's just what we say, as we say in Arabic, kalam fadi. It's just like whatever, right? Just to be said. But when it's really important, it doesn't take root. So the first point, my dear brothers and sisters, that we need to understand, the first, let's say, era that is very important is around the First World War, Second World War, when Britain and the Allied powers were fighting the Germans. And of course that the Holocaust took place. We know that the Jewish people suffered at the hands of the Nazi regime, and that many of them were killed, put in concentration camps, in open jails, locked up between walls, and gassed. Many of them died in wars. Even in my country, my grandma used to tell me that she used to have Jewish friends, and that one day, as a young girl, they were in class. The teacher was teaching, and all of a sudden the class was stopped. Some soldiers came in the class and just said, you, come with me. And there was about 7 or 8 people in the class who were Jewish. And they said, that's the last time I saw them, right? And they're just little girls. So definitely, some people say, no, this, that, but definitely these things happen. And definitely, as Muslims, we do not agree with that kind of thing, innocent people. The Quran is very clear about that, about killing innocent lives, and so on and so forth. All right? So this was happening to the Jewish people. Now, At that time, the League of Nations granted Britain the mandate to govern Palestine after World War I. Right? You have to understand, General Allenby takes over Palestine. Okay, you have the Balfour Declaration, 1917, and now there's this concept of a Jewish state. The Jews were already coming in, and the Muslims and the Jews there, by the way, sometimes people have amnesia, they think that there was no Jews in that area. There's a lot of Jews and Christians living together. They didn't understand. The Palestinian citizens did not understand what is going to happen. They were, to an extent, thinking we're helping all these Jewish people who are escaping the Holocaust and escaping the Nazi regime. And many of the Muslims, they thought Islamically they are helping people, and this is good deeds. This is khair, right? You're helping someone. This is what we do in the deen. So they didn't know what was happening in the political background and what was being built. So Jewish immigration increased during this period, and it started leading to tensions between the communities. Now these tensions didn't exist. What was happening is now, think about it. Polish, Russian, Romanian Jews are coming to Palestinian saying this is my land. So the Palestinian says, but I have a paper that says it's my grandfather's and my father's. And it says my name on it. It's an Ottoman endorsed paper, Palestinian official document that is saying that's mine. But the Austrian or Polish Jewish person says no. And he's got a couple soldiers next to him. And he says, you need to leave or we're going to shoot you. And in many cases, that's what happened. People got killed, shot, pushed out of their homes. So, of course, tensions are going to happen. I always try to say, imagine someone walks into your home. In America, right, if you have a permit, you can carry. So if someone comes into your house and trespasses, there's going to be a problem. People shouldn't. They got to be very smart. There's going to definitely be a problem. No one's going to be break to their window, 12 at night, and they're going to say, Ahlan wa sahlan, welcome to my house. What do you want, upstairs or downstairs? I'll take the couch, right? And the person will be like, no, couch is not good. You need to go to the outside in the shed, It doesn't make sense, brothers. It doesn't make sense. So when they start saying that tensions happen between Jewish and Arab communities, well, obviously, this will happen. No doubt. Because now you have a concept of self-defense, ain't it? I need to protect what's mine. Right? So we ask the Western rational world is there some way you can refute that? There's no refutation of that. This is exactly what was happening. So during that time, this period of 1917 to 1948 is very, very important. First World War, Second World War, Britain's role in it, the loss. You have to understand, the Ottoman Empire was being dissolved, the Khilafah was abolished, and there was consequences to the loss. And if you remember, the Ottomans were allied with who? Germany. With Germany, yeah? And because of that, they were punished, and any areas that were under their rule were basically now divided. Who divided that? Does anyone know? Okay, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Okay, that's literally Sykes and Picot are two people, a British and a French. Okay, and they basically sat down. Imagine like a table like this, and they carve out what the modern world kind of looks like in terms of borders. Interesting though to mark is the carving of certain areas in the Middle East. Upon analysis, you'll find that, and I think this was on purpose, because For example, the way Syria, Iraq, Turkey was carved was that certain areas with certain minorities would always be in an area of a certain majority. So for example, the Kurds will be split between like Turkey and Iraq, okay, and then you have obviously Kurdistan, and then there'll be some in Syria, okay, and then the Shia will be also partitioned in a certain way. It's almost like it was done to always have some minorities that would clash at some point with a ruling majority, if that ever happens. It's quite interesting to see because in most countries it's like that. Right? If you look at Syria, you'll find it. If you look at Turkey, you'll find it. If you look at Jordan, Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, and so on, you'll find it. And definitely it was done with intent, as they did separate things. You find that also in other countries as well. Not just that, but the constitutions and the way they were kind of lined up. For example, in Lebanon, the the prime minister has to be Sunni, right? And then another very important role will be taken by a Christian. Has to be by constitution. Has to be a Maronite Christian. And then the Shias have a certain political strength. So that's constitutionally, that's the way they've devised it. All right? And of course it is somehow based on a French law. Okay? In many Muslim countries, again, the law, when you look at it, it is a British kind of, you can say, combination of law with local law. It is still predominantly British. You look at North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. Okay, strong French influence on the laws, on the system, and so on. But they're Muslim countries. Right? So we need to understand, how did this come to be about? Language was taken. Language was changed. Many of the countries in Africa, sub-Saharan, again, you have French, English. You look at, it's all linked to the colonial past. The Middle East, same thing. All linked to the colonial past. So all these things were done, they didn't just haphazardly happen. Right? They're just hybrids of laws and systems. They were done on purpose. So that, something happens here, and we focus you here, easy to trigger and to change things, to change the political climate. Very, very easy to do that. Okay? It takes a spark to cause a problem. Do you guys remember what caused the First World War? Who can tell me?
Serbian man killed an ambassador, which was from Austria, and then Austria declared war on Serbia.
Right, so Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, right, in Bosnia, in Sarajevo, and basically that itself triggered the First World War. One thing, an event, okay? And it takes literally just one event to do that. There's tensions there already, right? There's tensions there already that were caused. You look at the Serbian-Bosnian War. Okay, people lived, when you look at Yugoslavia, people lived there together for a long time. No issues. I remember one of my friends told me that his neighbor was friends with, obviously, like best friends with their father, right? One Serb and one Bosniak. Best friends, sharing a fence, always together, best friends, families, everything, like, helping each other. It's like brothers. And one day, it's just, this whole thing started. The Serb said to the Bosniak, if I catch you, I'm going to kill you. Imagine from being brothers, it goes to like the partisanship and the nationalistic, feeling and tension was so strong that it can go from best brothers and friends to, I will kill you. We look at Rwanda, we look at Nigeria, we look at Somalia, we look at, if you deeply look into the sources of the conflicts, at the history, the issues of resources, blood diamonds, you look at the control of resources. Do you know that there's countries still today, they cannot sell they're extremely rich. There's certain countries in Africa that are so rich, but they cannot sell their resources till France gives them permission. And if France doesn't want to buy it, then they can set the price. They will set the price as to how much they can sell it for and who they can sell it for. It's really, really something that we need to look into and to question, and how is this linked to our lecture, to question what is the international community, humanitarian associations, what are they doing? What is their purpose in the first place when they are not stopping these injustices? And then they're claiming in their objectives, in their goals for their fancy documents and their big meetings, that they want to eradicate poverty and famine in Africa, for example. Yeah, Africa doesn't need, they're not poor. They're wealthier than any country. But they're not able to sell their resources. They don't have monopoly and ownership over their resources. You understand? That's how it's been made. Egypt, the Sinai, it's not allowed. They cannot have a presence. Can you imagine that huge area of land that's so strategic? They cannot touch it. Why? Again, because that's how they strategically, these people have made it happen. That canals, the sea control, right? Why are people so much freaking out about Turkey right now? Right? Because there are some expiry dates on some of these treaties, and now they want to make sure that it continues. So this is why history is important. If not, what will happen is not so educated, very gullible young men and women are going to look at YouTube videos and they're going to say, so what is this about in the first place? Like, what are we? It's very clear who's a terrorist here, right? It's very clear. It's very clear who's the perpetrator. Look at what these people are doing. And they get confused. And now, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that towards the end of time, the liar will be considered truthful. A truthful will be considered a liar. He'll be flipped. And people are going to be confused. Point number 2, a UN partition plan, 1947, is very important. They proposed a partition plan to create this separate state, Jewish state, and basically with an international administration for Al-Quds, specifically Jerusalem. And we know how important Quds is. And we know what Trump did and how he made that move. That move is, again, a very strategic move. It has a huge message to the world. He didn't just wake up and be like, yeah. Okay, he knew exactly what he's doing. He sent a very deep message. So the Jews accepted a plan. The Arab leaders rejected it, leading to increased hostilities. Obviously, the Jews accepted the plan because if you're coming from Poland and Austria, and they're saying, well, at least we'll give you part of this place that never belonged to you, of course you're going to say, yeah, it's good for me, right? In doing so, do you see the manipulation of the conflict? It was almost like, these Arabs, they don't want to accept anything. They're not happy with anything. Do you understand, right? It's like, look at these Arabs. Like, they're just never grateful enough for what they have. Wait a second, dude. It's like my stuff. You took it, and now you want me to be happy about it? You guys are never happy. Just always complain. You're never satisfied. Of course they did it. Arab leaders rejected it. The Jews happily accepted the plan. Duh, of course, right? But this is how the twisting of who is right and who is wrong started. The psychological manipulation. Do you understand? And now these angry Arabs, right? It's usually the same guy that they put in. Actually, there was a study that they picked the same kind of face in these protests, with a big beard and his face is out and you can see his molars, right? They always try to show you the same type of image to associate it with a certain thing. And that's been drilled into the heads of people. And these guys with big beards and not very civilized, they're always angry and unsatisfied and they want to cause violence. So people started believing that. And the poor people, the invaders, right? Poor guys, they're just really sad. It's the same thing with the invasion of this continent, right? Where these explorers came from Spain. Till today, they're national heroes. We have days celebrating their days. Their name is there. This is something ludicrous. Because if you look at history, the amount of genocide that's taken place in this land is probably unprecedented. Right? The slavery and the killings and the atrocities that were done, and yet there are celebrations, which some have just passed, where people, they think that, hey, it's okay. By you celebrating something, are people not aware of the history? It's somehow, all of a sudden these natives came and saw these white people and they're like, hey, welcome, let's eat some turkey together. Yeah? Because you guys are so nice. You've just really killed a lot of us, right, through shooting and whatnot. But then the other half or whatever died because you brought all these diseases that our bodies were never used to from overseas, right? And that's very documented, by the way, right? Because their immune systems were not used to some of the things that these guys were coming from Europe, right? People here are very clean. They were living an organic life, very organic, right? From the land. So, again, right, you're like, wait a second, where is the story going? Like, it's twisted so much where here's the hero, the protagonist, and here's the villain, right? In movies, Hollywood, it's always the same thing. And through that repetitive effect, people now are confused. Okay? So, important. 1948, this is the Arab-Israeli War. So the state of Israel is declared 1948, leading to a war between Israel and the Arab states. This is important. During this conflict, Gaza comes under Egyptian rule. Okay, during this conflict, Gaza comes under the rule and control of Egypt. But the Arabs are trying to fight. Then 1956 is the Suez Crisis. And this is where Israel, along with the UK and friends, basically invade the Sinai Peninsula and responds to the Egyptian nationalization of the Suez Canal. And there's a lot of international pressure, but Gaza is still under Egyptian control. Then there's the 6-Day War in 1967. This is where things change. This is when Israel takes Gaza. Okay, this is the time in 1967 where the Gaza Strip and Sinai Peninsula and other territories are taken by Israel with this military campaign. Of course, and with the help of the big movers, right? They didn't do it themselves. The UN Security Council called for Israel's withdrawal from occupied territories, including Gaza. But guess what? They didn't listen. Okay? And it's the same thing. Okay, I don't know what is the purpose of this, but you have the UN Security Council. They always get together. They pass these statements and these requests, and then they're basically pretty much, most of them are ignored. All right? So again, the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules. Very clear. Then 1979, there's the first time that Israel makes peace with a Muslim country, and it is with Egypt. And then it's the first Arab state to officially recognize Israel, 1979. This is where things change now. This is where things become blurry. The Muslims are now changing. All right? Before that, as we said, 1948, the Arab states were like, hey, what's going on? Now we're not having this. All right? 30 years after, they're saying, okay, now we're changing. So this treaty comes in. They're given Sinai Peninsula, but they cannot occupy. And Gaza remains with Israel. Okay? This big jail is now there. I don't know if you've seen the walls. It is a jail. The building of the wall, all right, it's been established, and people in Gaza are locked in. No airport, they cannot leave. You know, they cannot go to the airport. Imagine, right? When we go to the airport, we go for Umrah, get your passport, stamp, have a nice trip, you can go wherever you want. It's freedom of movement. They don't have that. So it is a jail. It's cannot even called a state or whatever. Then you have the Oslo Accord, 1993, where Israel and the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, signed the Oslo Accord, leading to the establishment of the PA, the Palestinian Authority, and limited self-rule in Gaza and West Bank. It's like, and you're in jail, but you have like your own people and your own gang, and you can do whatever you want within the walls, right? You cannot do anything about outside. Nothing really changed. 2000, 2005, the second Intifada, and there's again war and fighting, and there's a huge Israeli military presence in Gaza, a lot of bombing, a lot of killing, and then finally they withdrew supposedly in 2005. However, it's like saying that the guards from the jail are not inside the jail now, they're just on the walls outside. They still had control. Not to mention the monitoring, constant monitoring of all the phones, by the way, all the communication, everything, like combing with a comb through sand, everything. So what does that mean, withdraw? It doesn't mean too much. So it says that basically they maintain control over borders and airspace. In 2006, Hamas takes this, they have an election, and they win an election in 2006. 2007, they take control of Gaza. There's factional fighting, there's fighting within themselves with Fatah and and basically leading to this political and geographical division between Gaza and the West Bank. And then obviously after that, the blockade and the conflicts imposed by Israel, 2007, movement is restricted. There's a lot of operations that take place during that time, a lot of scrimmages that are taking place, 2008, 2009, Operation Pillar of Defense, 2012, Operation Protective Edge, 2014. It's nice, these names are very interesting, right? But for us, it's terrorism. A terrorist attack, done, right? Operation Protective Edge. Sounds so fancy, eh? Right? Operation Cast Lead. Operation Pillar of Defense. It's like you almost want to cry. It's like a Hollywood movie, right? So this resulted in many significant casualties and huge infrastructure damages to Gaza, to this man-made jail. And it leads us to, today, and in between, every year, year and a half, something happens. Every year, year and a half, more and more Palestinians die. Every year, year and a half, the war just keeps going. And nothing's really changing. They're talking about two-state solutions. They've been talking about that for a long time. Yet the expansion have taken place continuously. And you can look at the maps, 1948 till today, how it changed. Okay, where was Palestine? And does Palestine even exist anymore according to the international community? Is it recognized? Is it a country? Like, can you fly from Palestine, from an airport? No, you have to go to Israel, to Tel Aviv. Right? So what happened? This country was basically dissolved, and it was separated into small different pieces because divide and conquer is a very, very realistic and strong concept. And again, it's very important to understand our history. It is very important to understand where we're coming from and where we started and why. If we forget this, we will get even more confused. And I would say that now, 2023, it's unprecedented confusion. This is the time where the Muslim ummah is so polarized on this issue and so divided that it's led to so much confusion and infighting and in debating amongst ulama, amongst du'at, amongst social media activists, you name it. Well, it was not like that before. What does this transition and change indicate? It indicates that, well, they are kind of doing what they want to do and what they wanted to do. They're kind of achieving their purpose. And it is sad, right? Again, disclaimer, of course, we always have to disclaimers. We're not endorsing terrorism. We're not endorsing killing of innocent people. We're not endorsing killing of anything. We're talking here and analyzing this issue from a historical context, so at least we understand what we're dealing with, right? Because if you don't, on their side, it's very clear. Their discourse is very clear, but for Muslims, we cannot even talk. You have to be very careful how you word things so that you don't get picked up, right? It's very interesting because, again, it shows the polarization. So even academically and intellectually, you cannot fight a war. Because why? Well, because people might be convinced, they might see the reality of it. So therefore, it has to be legislation that's put forth to limit you in your freedom of speech. Right? Then you got Second Amendment. You got so many. Where are these so-called rules? If even intellectually, right, we cannot fight. So on the one side, it is a fight for peace and justice with titles such as Operation Cast Lead. Sounds like a Netflix series, And Operation Pillar of Defense. I don't know who thought of that name, but it's really cool, It's really creative. And on the side of the Muslim, it is Operation Jihad, suicide bomber, with big beard, and you see the manipulation. And the psychological war is very, very deep because it affects the way people think. Of course, tawfiq is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we need to understand where we stand, and we need to continue at least exercise this intellectual war in making people not forget their history, keeping our children educated, understand what we are dealing with. And there's a lot more, of course, that is there. I ask you to please do your research, right? Always follow Islamic guidelines in taking knowledge and understanding things. Always follow the Quran, Sunnah, okay? Always, of course, you're living in a country, make sure you do not go against the laws. It is unwise for anyone to do that, okay? This is just the way it is. But be smart and wise, and always know the truth. You don't have to compromise your truth. Don't compromise your Islamic position because you're afraid that someone's going to do something or this and that. Okay, we're well within our rights, okay, to speak and so on. But at the same time, make sure you are smart and educated. And when you say it is something of, intellectual value, and hopefully more and more people in the world, and there is a change where people are starting to learn more, they're opening their eyes more, and they're reading more, and of course, changing their position when it comes to this. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide those people who really can make a difference, those people who really have the ability and the position to make a difference. And again, everyone will be questioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment based on their ability and position. Okay? The leader will be questioned more than the follower, okay? And so on and so forth. That's just the way it is. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us. Jazakallah khair. Barakallahu feekum. Subhanak Allahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Assalamu
Alaikum salam.
Just a quick, slight correction, if you don't
Sure.
mind. I really appreciate all of your time and explanation.
Fadal. Go ahead. Fadal.
Camp David the town of Camp David was, I remember when I was at the age of 12, it was September of 78. And the reason I remember that, because that in 1978, that Maqbool person who's called Menachem Begin was granted the Nobel Prize at that year. And just for formality, in 1979, when they came to the States here and they signed the dotted lines basically between each other. Just correction.
Allah yabarak fik. Jazakallah khair. Fadal Sheikh.
So we have 10 minutes for question and answer. You have questions,
We have
inshallah.
10 minutes for question and answer.
The brother in the back. There's a brother in the back.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I want to go, is a very challenging question. I know some people may feel offended by the question, so please forgive me. And I heard this from somebody who is a sheikh, alhamdulillah, and he made this opinion. He said, you know, this land of Palestine is a promised land for Jewish people. Why can't Arab people let it go? And he said, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam had 2 kids. And Allah has blessed the Muslims with Makkah and all these surrounding, all these Arab countries. Why is it too much for them to let Palestine go, as we know in Quran that Allah also mentioned that Jerusalem is a promised land. So why are we fighting about this and not letting it go? So what would be your answer to that?
Okay, Jazakallah khair. That is a very good answer. Question. May Allah bless you. Yeah, if you look at it from a Israeli-Palestinian conflict, then okay, even though I don't agree, but it's not that. Right? For us, it's a theological issue. So I said that yesterday. Bani Israel, who this was told, enter the promised land, Muqaddas, the holy land. This were the followers of Musa alayhi salam. They were Muslims. They were not Jewish. Okay, they were Muslim because if you go back to Ibrahim and his two sons and the lineages, right? Okay, you can talk about it as ethnicity. You can talk about it as, but in terms of this land was given, and by the same argument, if it is an order from Allah, it is to the Muslims this order, right? To enter. The followers of Musa alayhi salam are Muslim. Musa is a Muslim. He's the one who submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the Ulul Azmi min ar-Rusul, right? The strong endowed prophets. This is a theological issue for us. It's not the ethnic issue. It's not an issue of two countries. This is for us an issue of aqeedah. And not to mention the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in Surah Al-Isra, and we know the hadith of the significance of Baytul Maqdis for the aqeedah of the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ went to get salah. Everything, most of the ahkam, the sharia came tanzil min Rabbil Alameen, or came down from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, descended by the angel Jibreel alayhi salam. Salah was the special invitation that the Prophet ﷺ had to go up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And it happened from there. And the imamate of the Prophet ﷺ leading all the Anbiya. This is an issue for us. It's not just Palestine, Israel, it's not just land and so on. This is for us an issue of deen, of Islam, of our faith, right? So I know it's been constructed as a conflict and so on, but this land, subhanAllah, is so important, and Sheikh Kareem spoke extensively about it yesterday, about the importance of this land, about the Prophet ﷺ being asked which is the first masjid that was built, and he told us that it was, the foundations of Mecca, of Masjid al-Haram, and then the second was Baytul Maqdis, right? And how important that is. This is out of the three places only that you can make intention to visit and to get reward for praying in it, right? You have Mecca, Medina, and Masjid al-Aqsa. All right, this is part of our faith. This is not for the Muslims. This Aqsa and this area is important for the Nigerian and for the Pakistani and for the Bangladeshi as it is for the person from there itself. Yeah, please do not misunderstand. It is it's the same as it is for the Bangladeshi and the Pakistani and the Nigerian and the Sudani. Is the same as it is for the person who is in Quds or in Gaza or in this area, right? And the Prophet ﷺ told the whole ummah, he advises and told us, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, alaykum bisham, take care of Sham, take care of this area, take care of this responsibility. Yeah, so it is very important actually. Now,
Okay.
no.
Things are getting blurred in the history. What things are getting blurred in the history of the past 100 years, right? Like you mentioned. What Muslim books do we have in the English literature where we can actually look at real academic stuff done by the Muslims, so we can kind of learn this history and propagate and because a lot of the talks that kind of happen over the internet, we can distribute them, but that they get questioned, right? But we would love to go to real sources of narrative written by Muslims.
Now, as you said, the history is trying to be erased. Actually, in certain countries, because I'm from an educational background, in the curriculum is changing now. They're removing certain things, right? In quite some major Muslim countries, this is what's being done. Alhamdulillah, there are books and there are lectures. There's in Arabic, there's a lot of history. I mean, that's something that, alhamdulillah, cannot be, removed. In English, there's a brief history of Islam. There's quite a few books that have been written recently and translated. I think, Sheikh Kareem, also, you have some book.
Yeah, I'm actually
yes.
finishing it up, inshallah.
No.
Inshallah.
Right, so there are, alhamdulillah, that's the good thing about, inshallah, that we are able to continue to spread the knowledge. And just do a bit of research, you'll find, inshallah, enough information.
Inshallah, that's it for the questions, inshallah.
Barakallah feekum, jazakallah khair, wassalatu wassalamu sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Salam.